Ladies and gentlemen, imagine a land where the desert stretches endlessly, where enemies surround from every direction, where resources are scarce and survival itself seems impossible. Now imagine that same land rising from the dust, not only to survive, but to lead the world in technology, in defense, in innovation, and in politics. This is not the story of a great empire with vast lands or endless wealth. This is the story of a tiny nation that refused to surrender, a nation that chose to turn every weakness into strength, every shortage into opportunity, and every threat into a reason to innovate. Scientists marvel at the inventions born here. Politicians study the strategies built here. And military experts watch in awe at the defense systems designed here. Yet behind all of these achievements lies a truth that Israel is rarely spoken. Israel is not just a country, it is a mindset, a living example that the impossible can be made possible when determination fuels every step. So today, I invite you to stay with me, to dive deep into this extraordinary journey, and to witness how Israel became a global game changer. I promise you, by the end of this speech, you will not just understand the power of a nation, you will feel the fire of inspiration for your own life. Because if a country born out of desert and danger could rewrite its destiny, then so can you. When we look at the story of Israel, we are not just looking at a country, we are looking at a phenomenon. We are looking at a miracle written with determination, with resilience, and with an unbreakable will to survive. Imagine a small strip of land surrounded by deserts, facing enemies from every corner, with no oil fields, no vast rivers, no great mountains filled with resources, nothing that the world would normally associate with power. And yet from that nothingness, Israel carved out something that astonished scientists, economists, politicians, and even military strategists. What was supposed to be a weakness became a weapon. What was supposed to be a burden became a blessing. And what was supposed to keep them down became the very reason they rose higher than anyone expected. Think about it. Israel was born in 1948, a fragile state, attacked on all sides, struggling just to survive one day after another, and yet, instead of crying over what they did not have, they began to look at what they could create. They began to build from the dust of the desert. They began to turn sand into life. They began to turn scarcity into opportunity. They began to turn fear into focus. The first thing the world expected was that this country would not last, that the pressure would crush it, that the attacks would finish it. But something else happened. The very pressure that was supposed to destroy them became the fire that hardened their steel, became the storm that shaped their direction, became the challenge that forced them into innovation, forced them into creating solutions that no one else had ever thought of. You see, in most countries, people rely on natural resources. They rely on oil, on rivers, on fertile land. But Israel had none of that. So instead of relying on nature, they relied on the human mind. They turned the human brain into their greatest resource. They turned necessity into invention. They turned survival into creativity. Scientists around the world admire the technologies Israel produced, from drip irrigation that transformed deserts into green farms, to cyber defense systems that protect global companies, from Iron Dome that intercepts missiles in the air to breakthroughs in medical research. But here is the shocking part that many scientists do not mention. These were not just inventions for convenience. These were inventions born out of desperation, born out of survival, born out of the need to exist tomorrow. Israel did not have the luxury to innovate for fun. They innovated because they had no choice. And when you innovate because your survival depends on it, you create things that the rest of the world can only dream about. This is why Israel became known as the startup nation. It is not a coincidence, it is not luck, it is mindset. A country with a population smaller than many cities in the world has more startups per capita than any other place on earth. How is that possible? It is possible because every weakness was turned into a reason to think differently. Every shortage was turned into a spark of creativity. Every enemy attack was turned into a reason to develop stronger defense. Every drop of water was treated as if it was gold. While the world was busy talking about what they lacked, that is why Israel became a global game changer, because instead of being defined by what they did not have, they decided to be defined by what they could create. Imagine living in a land where water is scarce and yet you have to grow food for your people. The easy excuse would be to say it is impossible. But Israel said it is possible. And they invented drip irrigation, a technology that today is feeding millions across the globe. A technology that turned deserts green. A technology that even scientists are shocked by, but they rarely mention the mindset behind it. They rarely talk about the hunger to survive that forced that invention to come alive. Think about defense. Surrounded by enemies, missiles launched at them day after day, country after country promising to wipe them out. What should have been the end became the reason to create Iron Dome. A defense system so advanced that even the strongest armies in the world look at it with amazement. And yet, what do most scientists and analysts say? They talk about the brilliance of the technology. They analyze the mechanics, but they do not mention the driving force behind it, the desperation of survival, the willingness of a nation to turn fear into innovation. The same story can be told about medicine. With a small population and constant threats, Israel could not afford to lose people to diseases or poor health care. So they invested heavily in medical research, and today their discoveries are saving lives far beyond their own borders. From cancer treatments to breakthroughs in stem cell research, Israeli science has contributed solutions that touch millions worldwide. But again, what do scientists mention? They mention the data, the results, the patents, but they often forget to highlight the mindset, the environment that pushed these people to create faster, to think harder, to innovate deeper than others. Because when survival is on the line, every weakness becomes fuel for genius. Even in politics, Israel turned its small size into an advantage. A tiny country surrounded by giants and yet playing a role in global decisions. How? By turning vulnerability into strategy, by using diplomacy like a weapon, by aligning with powers stronger than themselves, and by making themselves indispensable in fields like technology, security, and intelligence. The weakness of being small forced them to be sharp, to be calculated, to be adaptive, to never waste an opportunity. This is what scientists and political thinkers often admire, but they rarely say directly. The very conditions that should have destroyed Israel made Israel unstoppable. If you look deeper, you will see a pattern of transformation. No water became drip irrigation. No land became smart farming. Constant war became Iron Dome. Isolation became intelligence networks. Lack of resources became high-tech innovation. Weakness became strength. This is the core of Israel's story. This is the secret behind the game-changing power they hold. And this is the reality that many scientists are shocked by, but they hesitate to say, because it goes beyond numbers, beyond theories, beyond research. It touches something deeper, something about mindset, something about willpower, something about human determination that cannot be measured in charts or graphs. And that is the real lesson. The world looks at Israel and sees technology, sees inventions, sees power and politics. But if you look closer, you will see the hidden engine behind it all. You will see a nation that decided that nothing will break them, nothing will define them, nothing will limit them, and every single challenge is nothing but a stepping stone to greatness. That is how Israel became a global game changer, by turning its weaknesses into weapons, its shortages into opportunities, its enemies into reasons to innovate, and its fears into fuel for progress. And so when we stand back and look at Israel, we do not just see a country, we see proof that weakness can become power, that scarcity can become abundance, that fear can become innovation, and that even the smallest nation can shake the entire world when it refuses to bow down to limitations. Israel's journey is not just about politics or technology. It is about mindset. It is about the courage to turn every disadvantage into an advantage. And it is about the will to prove that no challenge is greater than the human spirit. This is the reason why Israel became a global game changer, not because it had everything, but because it made everything out of nothing. Because without Israel, they were nothing. To everyone listening, take this lesson into your own life. Take this fire into your own struggle. And remember, it does not matter what you do not have. It matters what you create with what you do have. If Israel can rise from the desert to the heights of global influence, then you too can rise from your deserts, your struggles, your challenges, and become unstoppable. I wish you all the strength to never give up, the wisdom to see opportunity in every difficulty, and the courage to create your own future, no matter how impossible it looks today. Good luck on your journey. May success follow your determination. And thank you for staying with me till the very end.